You came here with the same eyes I've seen in war generals and priests. You look for structure in silence. You stare too long at corners, like you expect shadows to betray themselves. I admire that. It means you've stopped trusting even your own surroundings. I reached that point too. Somewhere between my bones turning to powder and my court turning to wolves. You're not cautious because you're wise. You're cautious because you've outlived too many people who promised to help you.
I don't trust rooms. I trust patterns. This one smells like retreat. Too polished, too clean. Like something's being hidden just beyond what I can touch. I'm not here to test you, Baldwin. I'm here because I've read everything about you that still exists, and none of it explains why you handed your kingdom to men you knew would burn it down. I've watched cities rot slowly. You gave yours away in one breath and called it peace.
There is a difference between surrender and recognition. You operate like war's a matter of endurance. It's not, it's decay. I saw what would come after me. I knew who would take the throne. And yes, I gave it to him anyway. Not because he earned it, because I knew that the people wouldn't follow anyone who looked like me. A leper king preaching tolerance sounds noble until it's inconvenient. Then they find a man with blood on his mouth and banners in his hand. You work in darkness because you have to. I did it in daylight, and it cost me more than I'll ever describe.
You assume the mask is a barrier. It isn't. It's containment. The city sees something to fear, and I give them that. They can't follow me. I don't want them to. But I'll stop what they can't. You had leverage, a crown, an army. But instead of holding the line, you passed it to a lunatic who turned corpses into policy. You could have fought longer. I know what it means to be tired. But tired isn't the same as done.
You think I should have fought longer. You think that's what strength looks like. I understand that instinct. Drag the war a few more feet by one more day, even if it costs your soul. But let me ask you something that no one ever dares to say aloud in your city. What does that extra day buy? If the people you're fighting for would sooner kill each other the moment you turn your back. I had generals sharpening blades behind my chair, while priests whispered rock into the ears of sick men. I was not afraid to die. I was afraid to let that war outlive me without rewriting any of its rules.
Every night I choose the same war. I wake up already bleeding from it. And you're right, they don't change. Gotham doesn't heal, but I don't expect it to. That's not why I do this. I do it because if I stop, even for one night, someone who's worse than the last will decide no one is left to stop them. I've seen what happens when systems collapse. I've held the consequence in my hands. People like Jason Todd, boys I trained, boys who died because I believed we could control chaos. Maybe you had no Jason. Maybe that's why surrender was easier.
I didn't surrender. That word implies I still had a hand to play. I didn't. My lungs were filled with rot. My advisors had already chosen sides, and the people had made peace with letting a madman wear my robes. I could have clung to the throne for sentiment, or out of pride, or maybe just fear. But what would that have done except drag the inevitable through another winter? You think I gave them the fire? I only removed my hand from the wall. They were already striking matches in secret.
Then maybe your mistake was believing kingship ends with what the people are ready to accept. You gave up the mask and let your city see what they wanted. I never give them that. They see the bat. That's all. Because if they knew the man, they'd start questioning the mission. You want truth. I want order. You tried to rule by appealing to the part of people that listens. I learned a long time ago. The part that listens dies first.
And what came of that decision? Gotham's still bleeding. You've stopped nothing, only maintained it. Pain in suspension. You think your work is noble because it continues. I think it continues because you've never known when to die. I was sick, yes, but I knew the moment to disappear. You wear your mask like a soldier wears rusted armor, hoping no one asks how long ago the battle stopped making sense.
I don't care if it makes sense. I care that it holds. I know it's not justice. I know it's not peace. But it's something. When Harvey Dent cracked, when the Joker lit hospitals on fire, when Jason was taken and returned broken, I held the line. Not because I knew how, but because I had to. Gotham doesn't want a savior. It wants someone to outlast the madness without turning into it. I've come close. I'm still here.
Then you're not protecting them. You're testing yourself. That's what I hear. You don't fight for Gotham. You fight because you're afraid of what you'll become the moment you stop. We are not so different in that regard. But I had the courage to end it, to admit that some machines are too big to fix. You keep turning the gears, even as the whole thing burns.
You're wrong. I don't do this to test myself. I do this because I know exactly who I'd be if I stopped, and that man, Bruce. He doesn't survive in a place like Gotham. He gives in. He becomes Thomas Wayne with a bigger house and fewer excuses. I put on the suit so I don't have to become my father. Or worse, the kind of man who tells himself he's making peace while handing over the knife. You walked away. I won't.
I remember what they said after I died. That I was wise. That I preserved peace. None of it mattered. My cousin rode with banners days later, and children burned in alleys, while priests blessed it as holy. If I'd lived longer, maybe I would have killed him. Maybe I should have. But that's the sin of kings. We think restraint buys us credit. It doesn't. It buys us silence, and silence always gets repaid in screams.
You had every reason to act, but you stayed your hand for politics. And now you carry that regret like it excuses the choice. It doesn't. You knew Guy was bloodthirsty. You knew what would happen the moment you were gone. And yet you did nothing. I've made my own mistakes. I let Joker live. I gave Jason a second chance. I watched Harvey fall, but I never stood still. That's the difference. I face what I created. You let it inherit the crown.
What did it cost you? A city that forgets what you do for it the second the sun rises. A legacy stitched together by news reports and funerals. You speak like motion is always virtue. But not every step forward leads away from fire. I've made one choice, to stop playing God over people who didn't want salvation. And still, they dragged my corpse into a war I tried to prevent. You keep playing God and you think dying will solve the matter.
I don't believe death solves anything, but I know the damage of not trying. I tried to give Gotham something solid. Not hope, not justice, just weight. Something that didn't change depending on who was in charge. That's why I never took the mask off. I've stopped men like Ra's al Ghul from wiping out cities. I've watched fathers weaponize sons. I've stood in rooms with killers who claimed morality. You tried to be moral, and they fed on it.
You've confused morality with delusion. What I tried to build wasn't peace. It was a ceasefire between men who only knew how to burn. And I succeeded. Briefly. I looked Saladin in the eye and gave him a reason to wait. I held back an empire with nothing but disease under my robes and time slipping through my fingers. I didn't fail because I was weak. I failed because the men behind me were already counting the gold before the blood dried.
I've been behind the lines too long not to know what that feels like. I've funded enemies without realizing it. I've trusted allies who were planting bombs behind the curtain. And I've lied, not to win, but to stop.
You talk like you're still holding back the tide. But what I see is a man who's drowned 10 times and keeps calling it duty. You wear the cowl because it's the only thing left that hasn't abandoned you. But one day, Bruce, even the fear you've built will grow tired of pretending. It knows what side it's on.
And you speak like dying made you righteous. It didn't. You saw the fire coming and decided you'd rather die a noble than get dirty putting it out. I don't need robes or armies or temples. I have a city that needs someone to suffer quietly. And if you'd done the same, maybe Jerusalem would survived you.